Hi guys, today we are talking about how to live the expat life as a Canadian. Welcome to my financial literacy channel where my aim is to empower, inform, and provide the agency to support Canadians from negatives to millions. If you'd like to find out more or connect with me, you can do so in the links below. So this video has been inspired by my own personal experiences working out of the country and the fact that many Canadians now with the work from home opportunities are trying to work from anywhere they can, whether it be an island in the Caribbean or a country in Europe or a bustling city somewhere in Asia. You've got options these days, and I'm going to tell you how to do it properly financially and how to be prepared. So the first thing to know is whether or not you're going to be a factual resident of Canada. That's the important thing first. So being a factual resident of Canada means that you still have significant ties to Canada, i.e. a spouse, a home, dependents. Do you have bank accounts in Canada? Do you still have a driver's license? Do you have furniture, a vehicle? Those sorts of things are considered substantial ties to Canada and will likely keep you a factual resident. The other thing that's important to know if you don't have these things, if you sell these things, for example, that being out of the country for over 183 days is what's going to push you over the edge into being an immigrant or a non-resident of Canada, especially if you set up residential ties in a new home. So for example, you purchase a new house or a new property in Italy, or you find a job in a new location. There may be some tax treaties between Canada and your new country, but do be aware that this may change your status. If your status changes from that of a factual resident, you are required to tell your banks and bank accounts and credit cards right away because it changes your status and your taxation on all different accounts. The way to confirm whether or not this applies to you and how it applies to you is to have a good long conversation with your accountant. So one of the most important documents you can have, which most people forget about, is something called a power of attorney. What this allows you to do is to basically designate someone in Canada to take action on your behalf on your assets. Now be careful because a power of attorney basically is you for legal purposes and can sell your home, can empty your bank accounts, can do all sorts of legal things like that in your name. But it's important that you have one because if you are not in Canada and something comes up where you need to access bank accounts, handle some financial decisions and whatever, you will not be able to do that from afar. The law still states that you generally need to be in Canada in order to take advantage of or take care of a lot of these financial requirements. Other things to do before you leave are to organize all of your insurances. So travel insurance, for example, is an important one. You can find specialty travel agents or specialty insurance agents that will sell travel insurance specifically, either for expats or for an extended period of time, depending on what you're doing. If you are employed with a company that provides group benefits, 9 times out of 10, you already have travel insurance built into your contract, into your group benefits contract, that is. But do be aware that these travel benefits usually only extend for 3 to 6 months and no more than that. So anytime afterwards, you'd be responsible for your own medical. And if you are in a foreign country and an emergency occurs, that's all coming out of pocket unless you have insurance in place. In the event of a medical emergency, please be aware that your insurance company is also a really great resource because you can call them and say, hey, I need to find a doctor here. Hey, I broke my leg. What do I do? If it's something more serious than that, then your insurance company will most likely fly you home to take advantage of Canadian healthcare. If you have property to rent, you're going to want to find yourself a property manager. You can attempt to do this on your own, but be aware that in the event you need to evict someone, like I've had to do from afar, then unfortunately you'll need to hire a property manager anyway. So it's handy to have at least 1 or 2 people that are willing to step in and to take care of your property while you're gone, whether they're good family, good friends, or as I said, a professional that you're paying to take care of your property for you. Other things to think of are setting up a mailbox for all of your mail to go to and have somebody with a key copy so they can go in and check your mail while you're gone. If you have a vehicle, you should change your insurance over to a sitting insurance. So in Canada, unfortunately, if you drop your insurance and then reapply for insurance in the future, you could be charged extra because you weren't insured previously, and or any forgiveness that you had on your previous plans would go away. It's just like a parked insurance kind of thing. It's just a few dollars a month usually, and will cover you until you return when you can change it back. A totally non-financial piece of advice: take your car battery out of the car, otherwise it will slowly drain while it's sitting there. I love to be overly prepared and have absolutely everything with me. When I say everything, I mean have a copy of your birth certificate, have a secondary copy of your passport, and or take a picture and keep it on a cloud drive somewhere so that you have it just in case. Do the same thing for any driver's licenses, same thing for your birth certificate, especially if you're going to be living out of the country and you're considering a work from home visa of some sort. Many countries are offering these now. They will allow you to open a local bank account, but you're going to need quite a bit of personal proof. If you fall in love with a country and you'd like to stay there or take advantage of purchasing property or other things, again, having those personal documents and proof of who you are going to be pretty vital. From a medical perspective, make sure you take a copy of every single one of your prescriptions. Yes, there's a copy on the bottle. Of course, there's a little label, but if you need to get a refill, or if you're passing borders where they're quite strict on the control of what you're bringing in and out, and if you take daily medicine, for example, you may need to be carrying a huge quantity of these meds, then you're going to want to make sure that you have a literal paper copy of your doctor's prescription with either a stamp from the pharmacy or a stamp from the doctor's office itself to verify its authenticity. Now, when it comes down to the finances of it all, one of the things I suggest is, of course, having a good sized reserve. When you move to a new country, there are always a bunch of new expenses that you didn't see coming. For example, when I spent some time in the Caribbean, I needed to invest in the internet infrastructure at the place I was renting because obviously it wasn't good enough for my job. And of course, if you are maintaining property or other things in Canada while living abroad, you need to be prepared in the event that your property doesn't rent. Usually people who own property or manage property and rent it out professionally or consistently expect there to be about a 20% vacancy rate. So that means that your property would be full 80% of the time, but 20% of your rent you should expect not to earn. Make sure that these reserves are available in both cash and credit. One of the biggest things while traveling is that not all institutions, not all processing machines will accept the same processing services that you have at home. So for example, Interac may not be available with the same ubiquity that we have in Canada. It's everywhere in Canada, but it's not necessarily going to be on the trains through France, for example. It is a little bit easier with some of the larger companies, Visa, MasterCard, but again, not all merchants will have the ability to process these cards. And if you're moving to another country where their economy is a little bit more cash based, you might be totally out of luck trying to pay for cards or trying to pay with cards at all. For that reason, make sure that you take a number of different cards with you and have money in all of these different accounts. There are several companies that work internationally that we know as Canadians. So TD, for example, also exists in the US. CIBC, there is actually a Caribbean version, for example. And the thing about this is it can be a bit misleading. They look like the same banks, but they are not. The regulations are so significantly different between each country that you will not be able to use your CIBC account at a Caribbean CIBC because they're simply not the same bank. They may have the same parent company, but you're not going to be able to access your accounts as though you were accessing them at a home branch. As I mentioned, you may be interested in opening a local bank account. For example, if you're renting a place a little bit more long term, like 6 months to 12 months, perhaps you're paying for insurances on a vehicle you decided to purchase or anything like that that requires a local bank account, then you're going to need a visa. As a foreigner, as a random person who has landed in the country, you're not allowed to open a bank account in a different country. That's the same reason you need to inform Canadian banks when you leave that you are no longer a Canadian resident, if that's the case, because there are different rules for foreigners or for non-residents than there are for residents. For example, if you become a non-resident of Canada, you can no longer open a new account. You can't apply for insurance, for example. So your options become significantly limited because you're no longer a resident of that country. Cash is king when you are traveling. The best way to use cash is to, number one, be cautious about the amounts you're pulling out. So I like to pull out enough for a week or two at a time, but then hide that cash at home. You also want to be wary of fees when you're pulling. So it's, generally speaking, hands down less expensive to be using the exchange rates on the withdrawal directly from your bank account. These days, there are less and less exchange companies out there, pure exchange companies, and they tend to charge a pretty significant premium. Whereas because of the technology we have today, you can usually, again, provided you can find a machine that matches the little symbols on your card, you can usually pull money pretty easily from any ATM or whatever, and your bank will automatically provide an exchange rate. There is also automatically a premium charged. So if the exchange rate is 0.181, for example, you might actually be charged 0.183. So there'll be a small difference between what you're pulling and what the bank is charging in order for them to get their upcharge, obviously. Now, when it comes to withdrawals, you got to be aware of two fees, one from your own bank for pulling from a foreign institution, and two, possibly from the ATM where you're withdrawing. If you're lucky, you may be able to find a bank local to your new country that doesn't charge additional fees on top of what your bank is charging, but that is a rare lucky find. Traveling and working abroad can be quite instructional and obviously a lot of fun, and you get to experience a bunch of things you don't as a Canadian back home. You can take home some new ideas and maybe even some new financial tricks that you learn, because each culture handles their money just a little bit differently. I hope this gives you some good insight. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, or comment for more about your money. If your questions are larger than the contents of this video and you need to learn a little bit more about your situation, please reach out to the certified financial planner in your life. Or if you need me, you can contact me by text, by email, or you can set up a 30-minute free of charge phone call to point you in the right direction. I am currently taking on new clients and I am always happy to help. Until next time, wishing you financial security and success.